As the whip discussed, we're bringing a number of additional bills this week to combat fraud, and it's something that we've been seeing, we've been exposing, we've been bringing more tools forward so that we can root out fraud to protect taxpayers. And it's not just taxpayers who suffer. It's a lot of these programs that were intended to help mostly low-income people, kids with disabilities. If you think about some of the Minnesota fraud that's going on and the quote-unquote Leering centers that you all now know about, that money was intended for students, for children. In some cases, children with autism, where that money was stolen by fraudsters. And the government, Tim Walz, Keith Ellison, looked the other way. They knew what was going on. Whistleblowers have been telling us that. And they looked the other way and let the fraud continue and let the theft of that money continue. And again, it's not just billions, tens of billions of dollars stolen from taxpayers. It's money that's not going to people who need it, people with disabilities, senior citizens. Dr. Oz has talked about some of the fraud that he's seen in programs like hospice, where criminal organizations, not just individuals, in some cases, foreign countries operating with criminal entities and enterprises are setting up shops to steal tens of billions of dollars, in some cases taking programs away from people, healthcare programs away, and forcing people into things that they don't need, taking away benefits they paid into their whole life, and those dollars are gone, and we're now working to root it out. And you would think this would be an initiative that everybody in Congress would work on together. I wish it was. Sadly, you saw the vote last week. We brought a bill forward to root out fraud in child care centers. So it's not just suspected fraud, but if somebody's actually convicted of stealing money from child care programs, we got a bill that says you can't participate anymore if you've already stolen money from taxpayers. And do you know that 98% of Democrats on the House floor last week voted against that bill? 98% of Democrats voted to protect the fraudsters who are stealing money from child care programs. That's who Democrats are protecting. They're protecting criminals who are stealing money from children. It's that basic. So we're going to continue to bring more bills to protect the taxpayers of this country, to root out the fraud that we're seeing. We're also, of course, bringing a bill later today on Reconciliation 2.0 to fully fund the Department of Homeland Security. The final piece, as you know, is to fund ICE and border protection. This is a piece that Democrats have said they don't want to fund because they want open borders. They have made it crystal clear, the Democrat Party in Washington, that they want to go back to open borders, and we're not going to do that. We need to fully fund this department, especially at a time of heightened security threats. We also need to make sure that we renew FISA. One of the reasons that the Speaker's not here right now is he's over at the White House working with the President to finalize this agreement on FISA. You have the bill over in the Senate. We, of course, passed a bill to have a long-term renewal of FISA. The bill is over in the Senate. They're having negotiations right now, and hopefully they get it resolved. We stand ready to move that bill as soon as it's resolved in the Senate. But, hopefully that happens today, tomorrow. But it's important that that program does not go dark on Friday when it expires, because just understand, FISA has been used time and time again to stop terrorist attacks here on our homeland, on American soil, to prevent terrorist attacks. And that's a critical tool that we need to renew. So a lot of other things going on. I will point out a Truth Social post that Marlon Stutzman put out over the weekend, chronicling, a lot of you may be familiar, the Chicago Bears are looking at moving right now to Indiana. Yes, the Chicago Bears playing in Indiana. And you would ask why. He literally lays out in brutal detail how Democrats at all levels in Chicago and the state of Illinois literally ran the Chicago Bears out of Chicago and out of the state of Illinois. And I think it's just important to point out, when you look at what's coming up and what's the difference between the two parties, how one party literally after 100 years of the Chicago Bears playing football in Chicago, they're going to ultimately end up playing in Indiana, and they didn't want to. They wanted to stay, but now a multi-billion-dollar program with jobs, with tax revenue, all of that is going to leave the state of Illinois because they ran it out of the state through very specific actions that Marlon Stutzman chronicled. With that, finally, hopefully I see a lot of you out tomorrow night at the baseball game. Republicans will be playing the Democrats in a spirited competition. It is officially now a sellout. 38,000 tickets have been sold, which is pretty impressive when you think about it. And over $3 million for local charities raised already in the bank. And that's something we're very proud of. It helps a lot of youth programs here in the District of Columbia. And it's something that Republicans and Democrats come together to do. We want to beat the Democrats. We beat them last year, 13-2. We want to beat them again. But we also come together to raise money for a really good cause. Hope to see all of you there. And with that, we'll be happy to take some questions. Yes?
Thank you, Leader. You both talked about the importance of protecting taxpayers. So I wanted to know, yes or no, if the $1.8 billion weaponization fund is a good use of taxpayer funds.
Well, there is no weaponization fund. As you know, that was thought back and forth. And I know the president's talked about it. It was initially part of the discussion on Reconciliation 2.0 in the Senate, but as the Senate grappled with it, it was one of the final pieces that they dealt with. They chose not to put in place a weaponization fund, so the bill we have in the House does not have any funding for a weaponization fund. Yeah.
Sir, last week the House passed Ukraine Support Act. Why was the leadership of your conference against putting this bill on the floor?
Well, it was a discharge petition that went around some of the negotiations that are going on right now. If you look, there are negotiations going on in earnest between the Congress and the White House to put stronger sanctions against Russia. All of us, and I've supported this conflict on the Ukrainian side so that they can win. I mean, they've been incredibly heroic and brave in this fight. We want to see more pressure put on Russia, and there is a better approach right now being taken, better than the bill that was before us. Frankly, I think the bill that was voted on last week undermines some of those efforts to put more pressure on Russia. So the negotiations are ongoing to have a stronger sanctions bill against Russia to help Ukraine even more.
The president keeps saying that the California election was rigged. What evidence have you seen to show that there has been widespread fraud that has caused this election to be stolen towards the president?
Well, if you look over the years, what our concerns have been is on this wide scale where they mail ballots to everybody and then they have vote harvesting in California. And other states do this too, not many, but in states that do, I think where you really have a lot of voter anger, and you're seeing it in Los Angeles right now, even in their mayor's race, where you had wide changes after election night in the results of an election. And for days and weeks later, they just keep finding ballots until the election results change. That, look, whether you can prove fraud or not, it does undermine voter integrity in the vote, and whether they keep going through with that process. Most states have their elections resolved on election night.
But do you have any evidence of those ballots that are being counted were illegal in any way?
I think it's raised a lot of skepticism among voters when they see these wide changes days and weeks after the election, and you still can't get a result 2-3 weeks after an election happened. Why not have all of your elections take place on election day and have the results that night? Florida used to have problems years ago, and they fixed their problems. And now you get the results by usually 9:30 at night in a large state like Florida. It obviously can be done if you choose to do it. And if you don't, it just undermines a lot of people's faith in those elections. Yes, ma'am.
On discharge petitions, do you think members should be able to sign on to those, or do you disagree with the tool as
I don't support that process. I mean, look, we have committees, and the committees do hard work. And, everybody's got their own bills that they might want to move. And, as the majority leader, when people come to me and they want a bill moved, I tell them, first thing I always tell them is go talk to the chairman, work through the committee process. That is what the regular order is around here. And obviously most people do that. That might not always get the result you want when you go to committee, but that is the legislative process, and that's what I've surely urged we do. Maybe we take one more. Yes, ma'am.
What do you say to members who say that reconciliation should be used to instead of the normal appropriations process?
Well, we haven't done a normal appropriations process through reconciliation. What we're doing here is, if you look at Reconciliation 2.0, the bill that's before us today, it is taking two areas of the Department of Homeland Security the Democrats have completely walked away from. And they've said we're not going to fund it at all because they want an open border. And so as long as the Senate has a 60-vote requirement, we in the House passed a bill to fully fund the department. So it's not a House issue, it's a Senate problem, and you've seen it with other bills too. But on this front, the question is then, is there another way to properly fund the rest of the Homeland Security Department that isn't funded? Most of it's funded, but two critical pieces, ICE and CBP, are not. And so you can do that through reconciliation, and that's the process that is being used. Senator, last one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, appreciate it.
You came here early.
That's right, exactly. I know, representing here in the front row. As you said, the House has passed a version of FISA reauthorization. The Senate, if it passes it, is expected to pass a slightly different version. Given the idea of Bill Pulte stepping in as the acting DNI, do you believe the House has the votes now, Democrats are now off the table, it seems, to actually pass FISA over here, a reauthorization, without, if Bill Pulte is still in the mix?
Well, we made it clear, first of all, that everybody has acknowledged this is a critical tool in America's national security. You know, and if somebody wants to play games and say, well, they might not agree with an appointment in the Senate confirmation process, let that play out. But if you're really going to jeopardize the national security of America over a personality issue. And so right now what we're doing in the House is saying, we're not going to play that game. We're going to properly make sure that FISA is renewed. We passed a bill to do that. It's over in the Senate. The Senate's working through that. I hope they figure it out, because it's too critical for our national security that that program does not go dark. Friday night, of course, is the midnight hour, so to speak. And so we're here, we're going to work to get it done. One way or another, we have to keep FISA going because it's critical to America's national security, and it has stopped. No one disputes it has stopped multiple terrorist attacks here on our homeland. Anybody that would vote against that is putting America's national security at risk. I sure hope nobody would do that. Thank you.
The leaders, one more, sir.